So for glazing your pie dishes, remember we put texture on the back. So what we're gonna do is, just like our houses, we're gonna do an underglaze wash. So I just picked kind of a color that would match the top color. So I used a phase glaze for the top. You could also use a Potter's Choice. And just like your houses, we're doing a very light underglaze wash. So I don't need to dip a bunch of glaze in. I don't want to waste my underglaze. So I'm just getting my brush pretty wet and making it so that I can get this underglaze all around it. I picked blue because it kind of matches the top glaze that I'm going to use. And I'm just trying to make sure that it gets into those textures, just like your houses. And I'm actually not going to do all the way up to the rim because I am going to put my other glaze a little bit on the side, right? And you could choose that if you wanted to, or you could have it go all the way up to the rim. So like you could go all the way up to the rim with your underglaze, or you could have your front glaze kind of go a little over the side. So you're gonna wipe it back so that's accentuating the texture, right? We don't put texture on so that it blends in. We put texture on because we want to see it, right? So we've got to pick a glaze on texture that's going to show it, right? So that's why we're doing the underglaze, because the texture's on the bottom, and if we put a glaze on the bottom, it would melt and stick to the kiln, right? Now, underglaze is not glaze. It is just colored clay. So underglaze does not stick to the kiln. And just by wiping it back nicely, it's gonna show all of this texture and be a little bit more interesting than kind of just the naked clay. You might have to kind of get cleaner water, especially if more than one person is doing this at the same time at your table. You should have maybe your own bowl of water so that you're not contaminating and getting different colors. All right, so that's all I need to do for the bottom. And now I'm just going to work on the top. So underglazes always have this green label. They say velvet underglaze and then the name. They look pretty similar to how they turn out. Not like 100%, but you can kind of guess what color it's gonna turn out. This one says teal blue. So you're gonna use underglazes only on the bottom. Then you're gonna you can choose a Potter's Choice or a phase glaze. So this is a phase glaze. Here's a Potter's Choice. You see the name. These are the ones on the back wall of the glaze room. So you wanna pick something from that. And then when you are glazing with a nice big fan brush, this is not like painting class. You're not trying to get every drop of paint off of the brush before you dip it again. You want to just be glopping, okay? And going back and forth and back and forth. So if there's thick areas, you're kind of blending them back. So if I have this big chunk that I put on, I'm not gonna leave a big chunk there, right? Because that would make it uneven. I'm going over and smoothing it out just by going over and over the same area so that I know it's nice and covered evenly. But not being afraid to just go in and get a lot more glaze on my brush pretty often, okay? And for this one, it's very common that you'll have some glaze kind of get thicker on the edges because the way you're running your brush around it, like that. So just make sure that you check your rims. If you don't want to glaze the sides, then you would want to make sure that you're kind of cleaning those up so they don't have drips or blotchy areas. So I am gonna glaze the side of mine here. You can glaze the side, whoops, but just don't glaze the bottom. I'm gonna maybe try to like have like a natural line where it stops, just so that my texture kind of shows up a little bit on the side too. So the first layer dries pretty fast. Second layer dries a little bit slower. And then the third layer dries even slower because the moisture is being absorbed into the clay as you go. In the first layer, there's no moisture already there. So that's my first layer, except for the edges. I'm not gonna make you watch me do all of them, but the rule is underglaze for the bottom, phase glaze or Potter's Choice, or you could use a Shino or Potter's Choice Flux.